Hey guys, how's it going? It's Al. I'm going to go over this Monday Night Football single game showdown between the New Orleans Saints and the Carolina Panthers. We've got a whole lot to talk about on this episode of this video. Thank you guys for joining once again. I appreciate the support that you guys have shown to this channel all throughout the season, and let's finish the season strong. At the end of week 15, going into week 16, 17, and on into the playoffs with the shortened slates. Going to be a whole lot of single game showdown to play in there. In the playoffs with individual games. They're going to have full weekend slates, single day slates with 2 games, and of course they're going to have featured single game showdown slates for the playoffs on DraftKings. So whole lot of fun upcoming right here on this channel and on DraftKings. So thank you for being here. Drop a like on this video, hit that subscribe button, make sure you ring that notifications bell. Why don't we jump right into it with the players? Let's see what we have here for this week. We have a game total of about 50 here, with the New Orleans Saints favored in Carolina by 6, even though they haven't fared as well outside of the dome in past years, and even again this year. McCaffrey is as solid as they come. He is the highest projected player on the slate, and rightfully so. He's averaging 26.2 fantasy points, DraftKings points on the year. He's been getting a ton of goal line work. Now look, early in the season, he was not scoring any touchdowns, even on massive volume, right? Like he had a ton of volume early in the year. 16, 22, 30, 22, 15 touches, only scored one, what did he score? 1 touchdown in the first 6 weeks of the season, and it was through the air. Then all of a sudden there was a paradigm shift in Carolina. They started feeding him the ball inside the 5-yard line, and we saw those rushing touchdowns really start appearing, and he's contributing as well in the passing game with as much usage as he has in the passing game, and as elusive as he is, always a threat to score a touchdown. Also, getting 6+ targets basically every single game with a ceiling of 11. Then against Atlanta, he had 15, but that's Atlanta, and everybody has their biggest game of the year at running back against Atlanta. Christian McCaffrey at 11.6 is somebody you want to jam into your lineups, but at 17.4, he's a bit restrictive to fit into your captain spot, but he is definitely a viable captain for tournaments. I don't mind stacking him with Cam Newton in your lineups because they are very well correlated, despite what the correlation matrix says about running backs and quarterbacks not being correlated. When you have a running back like him or Saquon Barkley, who get as many targets as they get, such a large market share of their team's targets, that correlation matrix doesn't apply to them because it incorporates every single wide receiver, running back, quarterback, running back, wide receiver, quarterback matchup that can possibly be. And some of them just kind of buck the trend. There's outliers on both sides. So McCaffrey, Cam, definitely an outlier there. Michael Thomas, as efficient as a wide receiver can basically get, kind of a low ADOT guy. He catches balls around the line of scrimmage, very easily to convert into catches. He is great at contested catches, which is why you see every single week, basically, if he has 13 targets, he has 11 catches. 8 targets, 5 catches. 6 targets, 4. 8 targets, 8. 15, 12. These are not games where he gets 10 targets and catches 3 or 4 balls. He's not that type of receiver. He does have game-breaking ability. He can catch long passes, can get down the field, can stretch a defense, but the way he's rolled out in this offense with the other pieces that they have around him, they have other guys that stretch the field, and Traquan Smith and a couple other spots on the offense, and then they just basically utilize Michael Thomas as a satellite around the line of scrimmage between 5 and 20 yards downfield. And Drew Brees such an accurate passer and Michael Thomas so good at contested catches when he's not completely open, that all those targets turn into catches. Now, we know that he can have kind of a low floor, right? 8.7 for the salary that he's costing you 9, 7.8. You know you're going to get a solid-ish floor. You're not going to catch a donut from Michael Thomas, even in Showdown, but we need to have one of those big games, especially if we're going to pay up to plug him in at captain. I want him in my lineup. I don't know if I can afford him at captain with the other big guys that are in this game. I'll probably have a sprinkle in tournaments, but Drew Brees, one of those players that you can kind of pepper in there. On the road, his numbers have never been as good as they've been at home. And with the Saints usually playing from ahead, and the conversion to them being a very difficult team to stop on the ground when they're fully functioning, when they've got Kamara and when they've got Ingram and when they've got a lead, they turn into a very run-heavy offense. As you've seen, the last 4 weeks, no more than 31 attempts in any game for Drew Brees. And one game, he had over 300 yards. 2 of those 4 games, under 200 yards passing. So while Brees is very efficient and can turn low amount of attempts into touchdowns, as we see here against Atlanta, 22 attempts, 4 touchdowns, 30 attempts against Philadelphia for 363 yards and 4 touchdowns. That's unheard of efficiency. And he's done it over and over and over again, albeit when they're on the road, you may expect them to not be playing with as much of a lead as when they're at home. They're not going to probably run away from Carolina in Carolina. And Brees obviously not as efficient on the road as he is at home, as evidenced here. His away games this year, 18.5 DraftKings points. Home games, 28.7 DraftKings points. Just not asked to do as much on the road as he is at home in the Dome. So they do lean on the run more when they're away from home than when they are actually at home. Alvin Kamara, all things considered, Mark Ingram definitely taking away some of the touches that he was getting before, but still a solid amount of work. 19 touches 2 weeks ago, 17 touches last week. Back to being that guy that they're utilizing in the passing game. One target against Philly and Atlanta just is not really what you're going to look for, but they were playing with such a big lead that they didn't have to throw it. I expect Carolina to keep this game somewhat competitive. They can score against this New Orleans Saints defense, and with them playing at home, I expect this to be a little bit closer. Even if the Saints cover, I'm not expecting to be a 17 or a 21 point difference at any point during the game, which is going to force them to have to keep moving the ball down the field consistently and moving the chains and scoring touchdowns, as opposed to everything just kind of blitzing like they have a couple of times this year against Atlanta, against Philly, where they got out to big leads and just kind of sat on the leads and kind of rotated those running backs through. So Kamara, one of the top captain targets for me on this slate, considering his price is only $14K versus $16.5 for Thomas, $17.4 for McCaffrey. It gives you that extra $3K to work with. And on these showdown slates, that $3K can really come in handy down the road. Mark Ingram, maybe a sneaky captain. A couple of guys that might be a little bit lower that I don't think should be considered for captain. DJ Moore, I love this kid's talent. I think he's got big plays coming for the next 5-6 years out of this kid at wide receiver. Maybe it happens. I think it's a dart throw to plug him in at captain. It's a little bit, it's not as high a floor for your head-to-head games in tournaments. Yes, more things are acceptable in tournaments. I'm willing to accept the lower floor with the same possible ceiling. We know that Moore does have that sort of a ceiling in him if he can get himself into the end zone. We've seen it, but he's just not consistent enough as a rookie and in this offense, playing second fiddle to somebody like Christian McCaffrey. And definitely when they get around the goal line, he's the fourth guy behind Christian McCaffrey, Cam Newton, and Funchess. So with Moore being what he is in this offense, I'd rather plug him in at 8K into a lineup than plug him in at captain. There's really not a super cheap guy that I'm interested in at captain. Maybe if you're going to chase touchdowns with Funchess, but realize that that's basically what his role is now. He's just the red zone guy. He gets looks when they get inside the 10-yard line. He gets end zone targets. He gets red zone targets. Not going to be the guy that's going to get you these 11 or 8 targets anymore. I don't think that that's his role in this offense. They've kind of shifted to just more short passes, especially with Cam's shoulder hurting him the way that it is. And talking about Cam Newton, practiced fully, doesn't carry an injury designation into this game. We know that nobody's healthy at this point in an NFL season. That's just the way that the NFL goes. That's the way everything goes in this sport. Everybody's playing hurt. Some guys just need a hug. Some guys need a doctor. Cam is soldiering on as he does, but the efficiency has come down with 7 interceptions in the last 4 weeks. He has put forward his best completion percentage of any point in his career. He's been way more effective this year than in years past, but now that nagging shoulder injury keeping him from really attacking downfield, and his completion percentage and rating on throws that are over 15 yards has really taken a big dip from the beginning of the season to now. So I think that he's a little bit more danger in the captain spot than he would be if he was fully healthy. So let's take a look at a couple of lineups just to see I don't know what we can kind of come up with here. If like I said, if we plug McCaffrey in here, it's going to be tough to get a bunch of the studs into this lineup. So if we want Kamara, if we want Thomas, that leaves us with 4K left. Here's that gap that we always talk about. This is where they've narrowed it, right? Which I like. I didn't like this massive gap between the top guys and the lower guys, right? Where they've got the backup quarterbacks priced at 6K. Comes down from 8 to 7.2 to 6.4 and then 5.8. So I like this smaller gap. It used to be like 7,500 or 8,000 down to like 5K. There was a 3K gap between the highs and the lows. Now they've kind of narrowed that, giving you the opportunity to make some different lineups that you could even just a couple of weeks ago. Curtis Samuel, something we got to consider at 6,400, even though it might be a little bit too pricey for this lineup. Double-digit fantasy points in 4 straight games, getting a lot more usage. Another guy that can break small, as long as you get him the ball in space, can break a low A-dot throw and turn it into a bigger play. Does get a couple of handoffs here and there, but that's not where he's making his bread. He's getting it on screen passes. He's getting it on short slants. He's actually able to get downfield, but Cam not able to get him the ball right now as efficiently as he was before. But big playability for 6,400. I do like Samuel in this game and basically every week. If you're going to go with a kicker, you can. Again, be sure that in your groupings, if you're building lineups by hand, don't put more than one kicker or defense in your lineup. If you're using a lineup builder like the one at Daily Roto, you can set your groups. Make sure that you set things so that you have a group with the 2 kickers and the 2 defenses and set it to max of 1. Limit things to max of 1 in your tournament lineups when you're building 10, 20, 50, 150 lineups for this. Make sure that you're using those groups efficiently. Make sure you're stacking quarterbacks with their pass catchers. If we're going to run a Kamara Thomas lineup out there, we're probably going to want to have Brees. That's going to leave us with 700 average remaining per player, which is why I was saying that McCaffrey in captain doesn't really open that up for us. But if we were... did that wrong. But if we take Kamara out and we put him at captain, now that opens things up for us a little bit more. If it will let me put Kamara at the captain spot, now we can put Christian McCaffrey in here. That leaves us with 1.2K. We can take one punt player if we want to, if we choose. Daniel Arnold, Kirkwood, somebody like that. If we want to get kind of a cheapie. Kirkwood 3,000, a little bit too much for this lineup. Austin Carr 1K, doesn't get a ton of usage, but if there's a ding, there's somebody that we can plug in there. If there's an inactive, Tommy Lewis, same thing, not somebody who's getting a ton of usage. So if we're going to plug 4 5-figure guys into the lineup, I don't know that we can do it in this slate. I don't even know that it's possible, unless you want to go with somebody like Josh Hill and pray that he gets a target around the goal line. Tommy Lee Lewis, Smith, Taysom Hill, not getting as used as much. So I don't even know if this lineup is viable to go with a 4-stud lineup. We're going to have to dial it back a little bit. So who can we use in here? If we want to go with the 2 running backs, if you figure that Kamara is going to be playing from ahead, that means we don't have to have him. We can plug in a DJ Moore. That leaves us 4,500. We had mentioned Kirkwood before. That leaves us 6,100. You can go with, can't quite get up to Samuel there. You can go with Funchess at 58. We want to go a little bit cheaper at the captain spot. Let's say we want to get a little bit funky and hope that Mark Ingram has one of those games where they are playing from ahead and he does score 2 touchdowns, right? He has done that this year and last. So, and showdown slates can have, it's not always the highest projected guy in the captain at this point in the year, the way that salaries have broken down in these showdown slates. That ends up there in a GPP. Obviously, all the rules kind of go out the window when it comes to a GPP versus a head-to-head or a 50-50 lineup that you're building. So Mark Ingram, plugging him into captain at 10-8, now that leaves us with a little bit more wiggle room. We can still plug Kamara. We can maybe plug him. Maybe we can get McCaffrey. 4.1K, now that opens up a whole lot more for us down here at the bottom. We can fit Samuel in that lineup when we have 1,800 to fit a Taysom Hill or a Smith or a Carr. There's nobody down here that I really, really am excited about plugging in at captain who's cheap to open up a lot of things, but open up a lot of salary dollars. But the concentration of targets and carries on these 2 teams is pretty fine, right? It's a small tree of people that get used. McCaffrey's going to get his 20-plus touches. Thomas is going to get his 8-ish targets. The only buys that are going to split are Kamara and Ingram. Moore, Samuel getting their usage. You know where the usage is coming from, and you have to sprinkle probably that one guy in there, whether it's going to be a kicker to give you some salary, whether you think one of the defenses can flex on the other one. That's going to be the way that it's going to go. But that's going to do it for this time. Thank you guys for showing up week in and week out. No Thursday night game this week, but we do have a Saturday, so I'll have a Saturday special lineup coming out later in the week. We're going to have the first look video on Monday. We're going to have the weekend recap on Monday as well. And take a look down below and click on that show more button in the description to find all my other socials, as well as my Twitch stream where most of these videos are recorded live in front of a studio audience. Other than that, there's that subscribe button. Here's another video for you guys to check out, and I'll catch you later. Bye.